They say war doesn't come with warnings. For the soldiers trapped in Pokrovsk, there may have been none. The past 48 hours have turned the eastern Ukrainian city into a cage of steel and fire. On December 2nd, the leadership of Russian armed forces announced what they called the full capture of Pokrovsk, a major logistical hub and once vital artery for Ukrainian supplies. The Kremlin released footage of Russian troops raising their flag over ruined buildings, and Vladimir Putin himself visited a frontline command center, praising commanders for what he described as a liberation. But in response, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine denied the claim. According to their latest bulletin, Ukrainian units remain active inside the city, holding the northern sectors along the railway, hunting down Russian pockets, and keeping at least partial control. In the past 24 hours alone, they say they eliminated more than 100 enemy combatants, destroyed drones, a tank, armored vehicles, and cleared out a furious attempt by Russian forces to raise their banner. The truth lies somewhere between smoke and rubble, but one thing has become undeniable: the front around Pokrovsk has collapsed into chaos. One day saw 191 combat engagements across the broader front. Over half took place around Pokrovsk, Lyman, and the neighboring sectors. On the Pokrovsk axis alone, Russian forces attempted nearly 50 breakthroughs. Vladimir Putin's declaration, powerful, theatrical, clashes with the cold reality broadcast by Kyiv's general staff. This fight isn't over. Not yet. For those trapped inside Pokrovsk, up to tens of thousands of soldiers by some estimates, this isn't a surrender. It's a death trap. Eastern Ukraine's harsh winter is tightening its grip. Resupply routes are fractured. Enemy fire dominates the skies and the ground. Drones swarm like locusts. Artillery and airstrikes hammer every known checkpoint along the supply corridors. The context matters. For months, Pokrovsk has been under mounting pressure. Moscow's push has been relentless, combining infiltration squads, drone reconnaissance, artillery hammering, and waves of mechanized units, all aimed at severing Ukraine's hold on a junction that links the Donetsk region's rail and road network, supplying thousands of troops further west. Now, as Russian flags wave over bomb-scarred streets, the world watches. Russia is using this moment, whether real or symbolic, to assert momentum. Putin's timing is no accident. On the same day of the claim, envoys from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met him in Moscow to debate a U.S. draft peace proposal. A captured Pokrovsk, if accepted internationally, could reshape negotiations, stoke Russian leverage, and redraw the lines of what peace might mean. But even as Moscow edges towards celebrating victory, inside the ruins of Pokrovsk, soldiers are refusing to die quietly. The General Staff says Ukrainian troops keep fighting, clearing out small pockets, maintaining supply corridors to adjacent regions, rotating wounded, and trying to preserve a thread of resistance. This is the immediate reality. A city that once served as a backbone of Ukrainian defenses is now on fire. The front, and the fate of thousands of lives, is up in the air. The shellfire never stopped. Through the shattered streets of Pokrovsk, smoke mingles with dust, and what remains of supply corridors all but vanished. Overnight, Russian forces unleashed waves of drones, artillery, and airstrikes, their intent clear: to suffocate any possibility of Ukrainian reinforcement or evacuation. The operational summary by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that across the broad front line, a staggering 191 combat clashes erupted, more than half concentrated in the Pokrovsk sector. The Ukrainian defenders claimed they repelled dozens of assaults, even as Russian units attempted repeated breakthroughs. Inside the city, defense has collapsed into brutal small unit, street-by-street warfare. According to Ukrainian military sources, fighters hold parts of the northern railway line. In southern districts, Russian assault infantry has pushed forward, consolidating positions in ruined apartment blocks, industrial quarters, and destroyed coal plant zones. Observers say Russian troops moved from occupied towns via Donetsk and Seladov, entering southern outskirts under cover of fog and launching infiltration from multiple vectors. Reports from the Ukrainian side claim that for weeks they neutralized dozens of Russian combatants inside the city. Even 300 enemy troops were reportedly counted inside at one point. What happens in these ruins cannot be measured purely by territorial control. Every open street, every collapsed building has turned into a trap, a sniper's corridor, a death zone. Civilians, once tens of thousands strong, are largely gone. For those few who remain, and for soldiers on both sides, each moment is raw terror. Human supply lines for food, medicine, and reinforcements have been severed. Communication is unreliable. Ambulances and medevac routes are blocked. The infrastructure that once supported a functioning city simply doesn't exist anymore. The landscape resembles a ruin, with shadows that move, strike, vanish. On the Russian side, a high command is pushing its narrative: control achieved, liberation complete, victory secure. Videos posted by Moscow suggest Russian units marching under their flag through bomb-blasted streets. But those images, often narrow in scope, taken in abandoned quarters or areas cleared of defenders, may conceal far more brutal truths. Ukrainian authorities reject the claim. The General Staff insists active operations continue, investigating enemy holdouts, clearing residential blocks, eliminating sabotage cells, and working to reopen supply and evacuation corridors. In the midst of this destruction, the strategic stakes are enormous. For Moscow, claiming Pokrovsk is not just about ground gained, it's about narrative dominance. The city is a vital rail and logistics hub in eastern Donetsk. Its fall would disrupt Ukraine's ability to supply troops further west, undermine frontline resilience, and consolidate Russian control over key arteries. For Kyiv, holding the railway line, even at the edge of collapse, means preserving a sliver of resistance, a way to prevent total encirclement, to allow potential rotation, refugee evacuations, and to deny the Kremlin a clean victory. Yet as the bitter winter closes in, time is no longer on anyone's side. Cold bites harder when there's no secure shelter. Wounded fighters wait hours for medevac. Food, water, ammunition all run thin. The defenders' will is unbroken, but every hour sees more destruction, more casualties. And Russian strikes continue unabated. Amid all this, the larger war reverberates beyond the rubble. Political pressure on Kyiv mounts as diplomatic efforts, pushed by foreign mediators, intensify. Meanwhile, Moscow hammers home the claim of liberation, aiming to convert battlefield bloodshed into political leverage. The fate of Pokrovsk may determine more than just the next front line. It could reshape future talks, redraw maps, and shift the horizon of this war. But on the ground, in every shattered house, in every dark alley still holding defenders, it remains brutally simple: survive, fight, hold, or die. Now, the world watches as the firestorm around Pokrovsk pulses with consequences far beyond its bomb-cracked streets. On one side, Moscow celebrates a victory, parading what it calls liberation in Russian media. On the other, Kyiv, battered, bleeding, resolute, insists the war is far from over. This is not a freeze frame in a textbook. It is a raw, living warzone where fate is decided by whether soldiers survive the night, not whether lines on a map shift for diplomats. The significance of Pokrovsk is not symbolic alone. If the city's rail and highway links fall entirely under Russian control, Ukraine's western front reinforcements and supply chains would be squeezed, perhaps severed. That disruption could force Ukrainian commanders to reassess defensive priorities across multiple axes. It could reshuffle entire frontline dispositions, shrinking the buffer zones that have so far defended cities farther west. For Russian strategists, it offers momentum, territory to hold, logistics to exploit, a soundbite to pitch as progress. For Kyiv, it means immediate danger, collapse of a vital lifeline, mounting casualties, dwindling supplies, and the cold dread of abandonment. But for the men still holding out in those ruins, in ruined blocks, dark basements, bomb-scarred streets, the war is not measured in calls to Moscow or Kyiv. It is measured in survival, in each ration of ammunition, in each beat of the heart under shells. Their stories seldom reach cameras. The wounded lay waiting, rationed water and medical aid slipping away, medics improvising under fire, commanders whispering orders over broken radios, voices tight with exhaustion. Every step outside is a gamble. Every breath might be the last. What happens next, whether evacuation corridors can reopen, whether reinforcements can break through, whether civilians still entombed inside can escape, depends on decisions made far from these ruins, but felt deep within them. Diplomats may broker ceasefires, but on the ground the fighting writes its own fate in blood and rubble. For now, Pokrovsk is a crucible, Russian claims of capture hovering over continued Ukrainian resistance, a frontline fragmenting into 1,000 fight or die decisions, and a supply network straining under the weight of war. The outcome of this battle may shape not only the next chapter of the war, but the entire defense posture of Ukraine for months to come. If you value real, frontline updates and raw insight into what this war is doing to people, hit subscribe so you don't miss what unfolds next.